Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast of your favorite team in the Bay Area. And today we are talking Barracuda. I have Keegan, aka Half Wall Hockey, is going to be on. We're going to discuss the Barracuda season. I think we're going to fight about William Eklund playing in the NHL this year, and who knows, maybe more. So all that and more on today's episode of Locked On Sharks.
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm your host, JD Young, contributor at Fear the Fin, RIP, and San Jose Hockey Now. And today I'm joined by Keegan McNally, a contributor at San Jose Hockey Now, where we're going to be talking Barracuda. We're going to be talking their season, what Keegan sees with this team, and why I think William Eklund should be playing the NHL. And I have a feeling I know you're against me, but Keegan, how are you doing, buddy?
Good. How are you?
Good. We were just talking beforehand, talking about how our paths led us to become Sharks fans, and you know, it's always good to find Sharks fans from all around the world. So,
zooming in from the cold state of Rhode Island.
I don't even want to know how cold it is. Like, it's cold. It's like 50 here in Fresno, and it's too cold for me. And I'm ready for like 80, 90 degree weather. And I don't even. I
saw on the weather app. It said it's going to be -2 in like 4 days. So bad.
That's a big old nope from here. No thanks. Before we do get into the Barracuda, talk about their season and stuff, do want to let you know today's episode is brought to you guys by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. All right, Keegan, I'm going to start with this question. So, in your eyes, with all the talent that the Barracuda have added this year, you know, adding Ozzy, Bordeleau, Robbins, Eklund, you know, adding real goalie prospects. Oh, yeah. Has the season so far been a success, you think, for the Barracuda?
I would say absolutely. I think the comparison between watching the Barracuda last year and watching the Barracuda
that was a train wreck.
It was hard to watch Barracuda games at the end of the year last year. It was like pulling teeth almost. And now I get excited about watching Barracuda games. I will say there was a time in the middle of the season when the Barracuda were not so much fun to watch, but I think specifically in the last month or so, they really turned it around in a pretty significant way. So absolutely has been a success, especially with the arena, with a new coaching staff, a ton of new prospects coming in. It's been a success. I mean, they're still hanging on by like dear life to the last playoff spot because the AHL is odd with how they do their playoff system, but they're still clinging. There's still hope. But they're playing really a lot better this month for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree with you. And watching kind of the end of last year, especially, you know, like when Gushin got there and when Gannon LaRock got there, like I wanted to watch those guys. And yeah, like you were trying to pull out little highlights of them doing good stuff. And then there's just so much just ugliness to the end of that season. So, I mean, when you lose 15 games in a row, it's
absolutely,
it's a tough, you know, and you kind of talked about the lull. And I think that goes back to the injuries they've had on the blue line, right? You know, you had Derek Pouliot, who they brought in the offseason that kind of helped stabilize it. We know Ryan Merkley's situation, right? And, you know, they just had so many injuries on the blue line.
It was December to forget.
A December to forget.
Remember, it's the December to forget. It was like no blue line help. Your power play couldn't work. You couldn't break out of the zone. You couldn't defend. And it also coincided with Ryan Merkley kind of being the one guy to try and push any offense from and Artem Knyzhov. But it was basically probably the worst month of hockey that I've seen Ryan Merkley play since I started watching Ryan Merkley, however many years ago that he started joining the Sharks. It was a really rough month for Merkley, and that kind of was just not the right time for the one blue liner that you have that's offensive minded to do really poorly. So,
well, let's start with Merkley then. I mean, so we know he got traded. I was very much part of, hey, Ryan Merkley could be a very, very intriguing prospect. I know the defensive issues when he got drafted. You knew the attitude issues, but you could see the absolute talent. And we know I don't think he got his time in San Jose. I don't think he had the kind of put in the best situation, right? Got yo-yoed a lot last year between the Sharks and the Barracuda because of injuries. I don't think Bob Bugner was kind of the best teacher for Merkley. Do you think the Sharks gave up too early on Merkley, or what do you think with Ryan Merkley?
It's really tough to say. I think if it gave up too early or not. There's still a lot there offensively with Ryan Merkley that we can see in little flashes like we did last year on the Sharks. But it really wasn't Ryan Merkley's season. His game was not on pretty much the whole year. And I think a lot of that might have had to do with him probably expecting to be on an NHL roster and then not being on one the first day. Basically, within a couple of weeks of training camp, he was sent down. And it just seemed like they were going away from him from the very beginning. There was hope that he would kind of rebound and kind of regain some footing, but it just didn't really happen. So it's hard to say exactly with Merkley. There is issues with defense and with concentration and issues with defending the rush and 2-on-1s and just making the right and simple play defensively that he still doesn't get to. But then the offensive issues were still pretty apparent. He kept trying to overcomplicate every single puck touch. And he wouldn't just make the simple outlet pass. He'd try and skate around three people and then make a pass into someone's shins. It was pretty frustrating, but I think with a new coaching staff, a new place to be for Merkley, I think it's going to be the only way that he's going to succeed in the NHL at this point.
Yeah, and it's kind of, I'm sure he's frustrated, right? Especially when Cicek got to go to Europe. You kind of see where he was in the pecking order with the new administration in San Jose. But now you're going to Colorado where you have Taze and you have Cale Makar, and it's like, I don't see him cracking that lineup anytime soon, right? Yeah.
I don't think he's in that way. But I think Colorado is kind of taking the approach when the Sharks drafted Merkley. They're taking the same approach. They're taking the big swing on a guy who's going to hit maybe for you when you don't have a lot of cap space, when you're trying to extend your window. Say Ryan Merkley in a year is some reason a 30-point defenseman in the NHL somehow. It's possible. It's not very likely, but there's a possibility there. So I understand why they would pull that swing, basically.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And, you kind of trade a problem child of like, okay, give me your first round pick who hasn't done anything, and I'll give you my first round pick.
I love Martin Kaut. Oh my gosh, we could talk about Martin Kaut too.
All right, we'll talk about Martin Kaut here in 1 second. But before we do that, I do have to let you guys know about our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, especially, you have Super Bowl season is here, coming up in 2 weeks. If you want to kind of start betting on the big game, FanDuel is the #1 sportsbook in America. We're excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because of the #1 sportsbook in America, FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, it's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. Download FanDuel now so you can bet Super Bowl 57 with a no-sweat first bet. You get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from money line to point spreads to who will score a touchdown. Again, I really like the Jalen Hurts rushing touchdown. Give me that. FanDuel Sportsbook app is safe, secure, and super easy to use. And best of all, you can get paid your winnings instantly. So join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/lockedon to claim your no-sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, so Martin Kaut, you're very excited about him. Why? I mean, we've seen little flashes so far with the Barracuda.
For sure.
He's already been put on the first line playing with Agazino and playing with Eklund. Definitely a different body than most of these small forwards that are running around. What's kind of excites you about him?
Yeah, he is a very good complement to Eklund, I think, on his line. It was something that you just brought up there. The size is kind of an issue of the forwards of the Barracuda. You've got Agazino, who's a little undersized, Bordeleau, Eklund, Gushchin. Robbins isn't the largest. Then you've got a bunch of guys that are very good in their roles, like Suisse and some of the bottom six players that aren't really able to fill up into the top of the lineup and match Eklund's skill level. And Kaut is kind of like a good in between. He's a skilled player, but he does play physical. He's got a big body. He's got a great looking shot when he can get it and actually deploy it. He's kind of like like Ko is another big body right-handed shot, all of that, but Ko doesn't have like a lot of physicality.
He hasn't filled up his frame yet because like like Ko kind of drives you crazy where it's like you're a big guy, you should probably play a little bit more physical, and I think that'll come when with more
he just needs a little more time. I think he's a little too used to playing in juniors right now as a big body, and he just can kind of hold on to the puck forever, and no one's going to be able to knock it off of him. But that's completely changed now that he's in the AHL. So I think he needs a little more time. But Kaut is kind of like Ko in 3 years, I think, or something, or similar to that, basically, where he's developed enough where he's got a big body. He knows how to play in the AHL at a professional level. And he's really complimenting that line. Like that first game that he came in, it was like a completely different line. So I'm excited to see them go forward with it. I do also remember in 2018 when we drafted Merkley that a bunch of people on internet forums and all that were really wanting Martin Kaut anyway. I just thought that was really funny that it's kind of like flipped around now that we're like, oh, well, we'll trade you 1 for 1.
Yep. I mean, I was very much on the Merkley train way back in the day because again, the upside is so tantalizing, right? It's just,
for sure.
Of course, we know how that's turned out. So, let's talk about Eklund and Bordeleau.
Okay.
All right. I know I am very much on the let's let them play in the NHL here soon because they've had a really good half season or so in the AHL, and I want to see it as a kind of a measuring stick. How far has your game? We saw them last year playing in the NHL, and of course they both had some warts on their game, and
sure
they've improved. I'm ready to see them in the NHL and just see them with more talent around them. Like we talked about Eklund not having enough talented players around him. Throw on a line with Hertl and Meyer while Meyer's still here, and let him play for a little bit. And then the worst case scenario is you can just send him back down to the AHL, and he's going to be ending the season in the AHL anyway, playing AHL playoff hockey. What's the harm?
I mean, when you put it like that, it makes a lot of sense, but I still kind of stick by my original proposition. I should have there's an article that's going to be out.
I've seen the article. That's why I haven't gotten a chance to read it. I'm not allowed to read it, but I have seen the article in the
SJ Hockey Now.
In the San Jose Hockey Now. That's why I wanted to get a little tease out of you now from it.
So it'll probably be out this week. But it's kind of a breakdown of Eklund's time in the AHL so far and what I saw as a change from his SHL play to now. And it's a great change. I think the offseason really did him well in terms of the whole gain 8 pounds of muscle, whatever the thing is that NHL players say. I think he did actually gain a lot of muscle. He looks bigger. He's not as light on his feet because he would a lot of times just get knocked off the puck so easily and fall over and attempt to check and then would just fall down basically at the SHL level and the NHL level. That doesn't happen as much anymore, even though he's moved into a men's league, like a professional league. With a smaller ice surface, which I thought might be an issue, and it doesn't seem to be. He seems to be better able to get the puck off the wall and then head to the net with it. He's very aggressive. He's turned his game around from waiting or going to the corners and holding onto the puck and trying to find a way to cycle the puck around into just direct offense. He'll cut to the net, he'll shoot, he'll attempt to wrap around, he'll just kind of simplify his game a lot. He's also got something like 80% more shots this year than he did last year in the SHL, which is crazy. I did in terms of how a player plays if they're just 1 year able to generate 80% more shots, they've changed something really significantly in their game. And I don't want Eklund to stop it. Every time I watch him, I'm like, he's really growing into that. I'm probably the best player on this team or one of the best players on this team. And kind of taking that to heart, because there was a bit in the beginning when he was a little bit more hesitant. He kind of looked more like his Swedish self. And then he's kind of molded since then. And every game, it's pretty apparent that he's gaining more confidence. So my argument is, why ruin it? Why send him to the NHL where he probably will regress a little bit, especially on a bad team. That is going to just force him to try and make plays to stand out when he is already standing out on the Barracuda. That's my counter argument. We need
No,
like
it's
a nudge in the middle, you know?
yeah, it's a very fair argument, and I understand that like you don't want to ruin him and stuff. And I think people, it's like well, he can go to the NHL. It's not like he's stuck there, right? Like he's more than free to move back and forth type of thing. And I
True.
think especially now while he's still in his ELC, right? You can move back and forth freely. I'm also like, we've had a really long season. Can we just watch a little bit of the future?
Yeah.
I think he will get some game. I wouldn't be surprised, especially at the trade deadline when you expect some kind of pieces coming out. I won't be surprised if he gets to play some NHL games this year.
Yeah.
But like I said, I think he ends the season on the Barracuda because one, the Barracuda are going to be playing playoff hockey. We know Mike Greer right now is very much on like, let's make the Barracuda team as good as possible so all these young guys can get some like real playoff hockey experience and build on that type of situation and not just be happy to make the playoffs, but go into a playoff series expecting to win a playoff series, even if you're playing a much higher seed. But again, I just want to watch Eklund play an NHL game. Is that too much to ask?
The last thing I'll say is what happened last time when we like tried to change his levels around, when we went from NHL and then we sent him back, like there was definitely a hit in his confidence that I don't want to have happen again. Is my last point, but I understand your frustration. I want to see him on the NHL too. And I honestly, I think that he could fit in the NHL and do fine. I think if he was on the Sharks third line tomorrow, he'd probably do fine. But you want to be a little bit more than that.
Yeah, no, that's understandable. Bordeleau, I mean, we kind of a quicker, Bordeleau played really well in the third line last year, right? And he had Rudy and RIP, and then Noah Gregor. But he was very, very sheltered on that line, right? Logan Couture took like 80% of the offensive draws when that line was put together. Kind of the same thing. I think Bordeleau will probably, especially since he's a center, I think he will stay kind of in the AHL all season long, especially since you look at it, right? Lawrence isn't going anywhere. Sturm's probably not getting traded.
Sure.
Couture's not going anywhere, and Meyer's not going anywhere. Maybe he plays the wing, but I think they want to keep him in that center position, right?
Yeah. I think, and then that's something also I've heard a lot about Eklund is he was a center last year, and people kind of keep thinking he's going to be a center in the NHL, and I don't think that. Yeah, exactly. I think that he's better suited to the wing. He fits that kind of mold of being more of the perimeter playmaker, but also he's got some great retrieval skills to be able to get the puck and make something happen with it. Whereas Bordeleau, even though he is undersized, I think he fits better at center. He doesn't really have that kind of retrieval game that Eklund does. And he creates better up the middle of the ice than I would say Eklund does. He also is great at faceoffs. He's kind of like, because of the patient style of play that he plays, I prefer him at center. So you're right. I think it would be hard for him to find a place at the end of the year. Not that it's impossible, unless someone gets injured. Like say Sturm goes down, God forbid. We love Nico Sturm. But they might call him up just because they want to try him at a full get your own line kind of deal before next year. But it might be a little bit harder for Bordeleau. That said, I think there's a lot to say about Bordeleau that is great things and some things that he's done to really change his game this year.
His shooting this year is really especially that one timer that you saw a little bit at the World Juniors over the summer, and then it was like, oh wow, I didn't know he could do this. Like you did, you never saw that one timer. Yeah,
I watched probably 10, 15 games of his last year before he came to the Sharks, and that wasn't his game at all. Like he wasn't the guy who's going to pull the trigger on the power play. I mean, he had a ton of weapons around him, and that makes sense why he wasn't the trigger man. But I just didn't expect that he'd be able to hone this skill so much, and he really has, which is great. He's scoring power play, even strength, mostly power play, but some even strength as well. He has kind of moved away from the game that kind of he played in college though, because he doesn't really have that patient playmaking manipulative style that he used to in college. And I'm wondering if it's more of this is what I need to do on the Cuda, and then when he gets to the Sharks, he'll go back to that. Because he was still playing that style when he transitioned from Michigan to the Sharks last year. And we saw a bunch of creative playmaking and everything. So it'll be interesting to see when he does come up.
All right. Before we continue, we're going to talk about Ozzy Wiesblatt and kind of expectations for the Barracuda heading forward. Do want to take a quick break, let you guys know about our friends over at Built Bar. looking for a delicious treat, but don't want all the fat and calories, then you have to try a Built Bar. I know we just got through the holidays. Right now you're trying to, new year, new me, trying to eat a little bit healthier. That's where Built Bar comes in. Great thing about them is they're covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. They come in great flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, coconut almond, and only 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. And if you're like me and you hate waiting for stuff to come in the mail, you don't have to worry about it anymore. You can go to Walmart, go to Sam's Club, pick up a box today at Walmart. They have a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate or coconut puffs. Or if you go to Sam's Club, you can run in and grab a big 13-bar box of their hit flavors, brownie, batter, and churro. Thank me later. Or you don't know which one your favorite is yet, go to built.com. They have a whole variety. You can get actually just a variety box with a bunch of different flavors to try them out. So make sure you guys either go to Walmart, Sam's Club, or check out built.com today. All right. Ozzy. It has to be a little disappointing, right? That your first round pick could barely see the ice. And I know there's a lot of mouths to feed, especially in that kind of bottom six. Sure. I don't think Ozzy's quite a top 6 player in the AHL right now, but you have guys like Ko and Ozzy and Robbins and Raska and Luke Johnson and Cease, and you have a bunch of these guys you have to try to feed, try to get in there and get playing time. But it's got to be a little disappointing that your 2020 first round pick is getting healthy scratch in the AHL.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to when we heard about the 2020 draft, is that there was this big group of guys from like 25 to 60 and it was great players, great prospects at the time that were all kind of lumped into this big mess. I remember listening to Scouts talk about that a lot. It was a bunch of dudes that were similar skill level, but it's hard to really suss out which one you like and which one your team values. And I think that the draw with Ozzy was pretty apparent, especially in his draft year and his D+1 year, where he's quick on his skates. He's got some skill. He's got a lot of energy. He's got some feistiness. He plays physical. But it's kind of like the rest of the game hasn't caught up to that, where like the feistiness, the energy all stayed kind of the same, but the offensive level didn't really translate. He overcomplicates a lot of things. He will attempt to just rush all the way through the zone by himself, go around 4 people. It's kind of like the Merkley effect, but it's on the offensive side, or it's on as a forward. Yeah. So it's tough with Ozzy. He's also not getting a lot of playing time right now, so it's tough to say exactly how much of this is still an issue. But last year when I watched him, Prince Albert, it was the same thing. He was just overcomplicating every single puck touch. He also doesn't have a very...
There was nobody on Prince Albert too.
Yeah, also right? It was him. It was only him trying to do everything. And he doesn't have the strongest shot either, so it's not like he can fall back on that and try and just whip pucks from distance. So it really limits his offensive game right now. I think there's still a role for him because of the skating and the energy and the feistiness. I think he just needs to kind of mold his role into more of a bottom 6 player instead of trying to be a top 6 player with a bottom 6 skill set, if that makes sense.
No, that does. And, this happens to a lot of guys, right? Especially a guy like Ozzy, right? You're the best player on your team. And juniors, especially last year when Prince Albert was a train wreck and he was literally the only good player they had. And then you kind of have to like restart, and you're not the best player on the ice anymore. And you kind of have to kind of relearn your role. And, I know it's frustrating. I've expressed my frustrations where it's, you look at guys like even in his own draft class, or, Robbins and Bordeleau, which of these guys right now would you draft ahead of him, right? Robbins, Bordeleau, Ko, Gushin. Like, you're probably like, oh yeah, give me all those guys right now first, just because you've seen them produce in the AHL so far. But again, it's not a straight line when it comes to development. And I think, as frustrating as I still think Ozzy's going to get there. And I think, again, like he has those skills, like his skating, I think is what can help set him apart. And that energy and that feistiness, Mike Greer loves that, watching the way he picks it up and he sticks up for his teammate, and when the Sharks drafted him, we talked to the Prince Albert voice guy and announcer, and the word he used, he was a pitbull. Like that's the way he plays. He's a pitbull. And I think he needs to kind of build that confidence. And, there was talk of him maybe going back to juniors, but I still again, you're just running into the same problem of being the best player on the ice and already, and especially as a 20-year-old. I know. I think this should almost be kind of looked at as a redshirt year for Ozzy.
Mhm.
And then next year, when you assume Bordeleau and Eklund are probably up in the NHL, probably he's going to have more free time or more available ice time for him to play. And, I think this year he can kind of work on his body, start kind of building up. And then next year you see those skills start to translate, hopefully.
Yeah. And it's true. There's definitely things that are still there that can make him an NHL player. It's just the mindset needs to change, I think, a little bit in terms of his role, or somehow next year he's able to put it all together and he starts having that kind of like offensive breakout that you saw in his draft year and everything. But either way, I think there's still definitely hope for Ozzy's future. It's just like that whole first round label kind of messes with it. Because if Bordeleau's drafted 7 picks earlier and Ozzy's drafted 38 or 39, whatever Bordeleau was drafted, and I don't think it's really a conversation much.
We're not having this conversation, yeah.
Oh, well, Ozzy's a good guy. He's a 2nd round pick. And we'll look at Bordeleau. And if you look at Bordeleau's production, actually, in around his grouping, a lot of the forwards that were taken, 20 picks earlier or 10 picks earlier, he's outproducing them in the AHL. So it was definitely a good pick where it was. There was a lot of good guys in that draft, for sure.
If they just taken JJP, we'd be. Could you imagine Paterka and Bordeleau? Oh my god!
Or and then you take Keandre Miller in 2018, and there's always just like that. What if?
What if there? Yes. I was very high on JJP. Go check the tape. I was very high on JJP.
The table.
Kyle and I were pounding the table for JJP. Go check the tape. So, all right, we'll get out of here on this. So, what do you think is the expectations for the Barracuda heading into the kind of the final stretch here of the season? We know Sharks still have their trade deadline. It feels like Mike Grier is going to be making moves to try to continue to solidify this Barracuda team. We saw the Martin Kaut move. What do you think is the expectations for this team heading into the final stretch?
I think they know that they recognize that they were struggling. They've done a bunch of steps to try and address it already. And I think the expectation is to make the playoffs and then try and do some damage. I don't think they expect to be able to beat any of the teams that are like super, super stacked right now, but definitely make the playoffs, try and get some good playing time in for Eklund and Bordeleau, and then see who else can join them at the end of the year too. All
right, Keegan, you've said it all. Where can the people find you?
2 places. 3. On Twitter at halfwall_hockey. half-wallhockey.com is my blog, basically where I post updates on the NHL draft prospects, Barracuda prospects, and like Sharks musings. There's other, I'll call them half-wall scouts on there as well, people who post their own scouting reports for the NHL draft. So if you're interested in reading any of those or writing any of those, let me know. And then the last place I'm writing at SJ Hockey Now, and I should have an article out this week on Eklund, and then some Bordeleau stuff coming after that, and more stuff to come as we go towards the playoffs, hopefully.
Yes. No, I think the Barracuda are going to make the playoffs. I think they're going to make some noise. So, yeah, they're going to be feisty underdogs who are going to.
Yeah.
So, all right. Of course, you can find me on Twitter at myfryhole. You can follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Locked On Sharks. Listen wherever you get podcasts. Amazon Music, Apple, Spotify, you're listening to a podcast now. You can continue listening to one there. And you can watch on YouTube as well. Until tomorrow. Bye, friends.